Hello everybody, my name is Tom Foster and this is Talk of the Town. What we're doing in this show is highlighting all the great things that are happening here in the town of Clinton. We're talking about politics, we're talking about sports, and everything that makes our town a great town to live in. And speaking of great people that run our town, we're here tonight with the town council, the chairman of the town council, Chris Aniskovich. Chris, welcome.
Thank you, Tom.
Great to see you.
Good to see you.
Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background.
Sure. I moved here 2003. We were living out of state, moved back home, originally from Brantford. We came back home. My wife was pregnant with our first son, so we decided to move back home to be closer to my family. And so we were looking on the shoreline for properties to find, and there really wasn't much we wanted towards Brantford, which is where we originally wanted. So we kind of ventured out. We ended up in Clinton, came to this community, and kind of fell in love with it just because of the size of it. When I grew up in Brantford, Brantford was a small town, and kind of knew everybody. Every place you went, you knew everybody, and that's what we kind of felt as soon as we got here. So we moved here, and then from that point forward, I really just got involved in the community. I wanted to do it when we came here. Was a coach in Little League and coach in youth basketball. Became president of the youth football league here in town. So did all that stuff while the kids were growing up, and then now the kids were getting older. Then you decide, well, what else am I going to do?
Right.
So 6 years ago, I ran for planning and zoning, and then was elected to that for a 4-year term, and then also was on the Board of Assessment of Appeals. And then when we changed our form of government 3 years ago to the town council form of government, I ran for town council.
Now, was there something unique about Clinton that drew you to Clinton?
Yeah, just like obviously where it is. I mean, it's on the shoreline, it's on the water, beautiful, area there. We have our own town beach, and just the number of people that live here and how, sort of friendly they are. Everybody seems to kind of get along, and you felt we were coming to a community where we weren't going to be dealing with a lot of the politics. You hope that happens, but
Right.
it still exists everywhere.
Yeah.
But it just seemed, and as I got involved in more stuff, that it really was. People here, really love the community that we live in, and they want to do things for the community. That's what I was about when I ran for office here in town, and that's the way I'll continue to run.
Some people don't realize you have a full-time job.
You have to have a full-time job. Yes, it's not a paid job. So, and that's fine. I mean, I knew that going in. So, we have our meetings twice a month. There's a lot of other things that the chair does.
Sure.
But not that much. I mean, the benefit that we have now is we have a great town manager.
Yeah.
So we have a professional that runs the town, deals with day-to-day operations of the town. So the town council deals with sort of policies, procedures, goal setting, things that they would like to work on in town. And that's what we deal with when we meet and we get together. So it relieves a lot of the job load for the town council members.
Well, you talked about, working in sports, and you talked about, you have a full-time job. What is it about, what draws you into town politics? I mean, you could have a special drive inside that said, hey, I want to get involved, I want to make a difference in this town. What is it about that drives you?
Yeah. I guess you got to be a little crazy, I guess. So, you get into it thinking and hoping that you're going to make a difference. And I do believe and think that I have, in the positions that I've served and now serving as the chairs of town council, making sure that we get together and talk as a group. Put the politics aside, that really has nothing to do with what we're trying to do on the town council and what we're trying to do on some of the boards and commissions. What it has to do with is our town, and the decisions that we make should be for the benefit of our town and not for our political parties or our agendas. So that's why I got involved, because I wanted to be able to have an impact on that and to make sure that it would be something that I can work on and try to do as we grew as a town. Because once you bring a town manager in, things become different. And you have somebody to run the town, and on the town council side, we have our jobs to do. So
Sure.
you want to be able to think that you're making a difference and get involved. If you don't think you can, then you don't get involved.
So how long have you been chairman now?
This is going on year 3. So every 2 years we'll elect a new chair. So I was elected chair first go around, second go around, and then a year and a half from now we'll run again for town council.
So can you run as for chairman as often as you want?
So you don't run for chair. What happens is you run for town council, and then the council themselves elects the chairman.
Okay.
So that's how that is determined per our charter. So in the charter, that's how it was written in.
So it's very similar to like the Speaker of the House.
That's all it is. I mean, I'm a
It's your part-
figurehead. That's
Right.
all it is. So great. I get to go to the parades.
Get to wave to all the people.
Right. So other than that, I don't have any more power on the town council than any other council member.
Now you talk about the town council. How many members do you have of the town council?
Currently, we have 7 members, 3 of which are new. So just this past November, we seated 3 new members members, Tom Hollinger, Carrie Allen, and Chris Basante. And then we have the leftovers 4, which are myself, Dennis Donovan, Christine Goupil, and Carol Walter. So first couple months is, the getting to know period, kind of knowing what new members would like to do and what they'd like to work on. So I think we've gotten through that. I think the council's doing a great job. We get along. We set that, the party agendas and party affiliation stuff to the side, and we're working together really well. And as we grow, I think it's getting better, and looking forward to what we're going to do for the next year and a half.
Now, you mentioned the party affiliation. How many different parties are represented in the town council?
Right now, just 2, just Democrat and Republican. Previous council, we had a Green Party member, Eric Bergman. He lost the last election, so now we just have 4 Republicans and 3 Democrats.
Okay. Now, you mentioned 4 Democrats. I mean,
4 Republicans.
4 Republicans, 3 Democrats. Now, obviously, do you only vote when it's a tie?
I only vote when it's a tie.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how often does that happen?
Very rarely.
And do you find, like you said, that these things don't come down on political lines, they come down on what's for good of the
Absolutely.
That's great.
And I think everybody on it right now understands that. And again, listen, I don't live in a fantasy world. We're going to agree to disagree on a lot of things.
Yeah.
But ultimately, once you then speak through and talk through what you're trying to do, you kind of understand. Because a lot of people that, everybody's going to have an opinion on that. But again, if you're going into this and you're thinking about what the decision that ultimately we will make is based on what is beneficial to our town.
That's great. That's what I think it should be.
Yes, absolutely, and especially municipal, state. I mean, that's what you care about because you're representing the people. You're not, you get elected under a party.
Yeah.
Understood.
Yep.
But once you're seated, you're representing the town as a whole. You're not representing your party. So setting that stuff aside and making sure that those decisions that you make are in the best interest.
And you have found that to be the case.
I absolutely have found
That's
that.
great. That's
Yeah, I
great.
think this council, with the new members coming in, we've sort of started to gel now, and it's good. It's fun. It's enjoyable. We laugh at meetings. We have some fun times, and it's good that you can all sit at a table, get along, and understand that you're going to agree to disagree.
Right.
But ultimately, you're going to make the right decision.
That's great. Now, is there any limit on how many times you can run for town council?
And no, per the charter, you can run as many times as you want until they throw you out.
Till they throw you out. Well, let's hope that doesn't happen for a long time. Now, you mentioned the town manager.
Yep.
How do you interact with the town manager?
Basically agenda items, mostly, so on a weekly basis. There's things that he will have been brought to his attention as it relates to some of the things that the council may be working on, and then we decide, when those items will be put on the agenda to further discuss with the council members. Other than that, there's, it's not a lot, because he does what he does, we do what we do. The interaction is related mostly to the meetings and what we'll have to discuss at our meetings. So if there's things that are brought to his attention, he'll bring it up to myself, and then we'll talk about it, and then we want to talk it at this meeting or next meeting, and then we just put that path out there.
Now, does Carl have a lot of latitude in terms of what he can do? I mean, how often does he have to come to the board to have approvals, decisions?
Mostly all the time.
All the time?
Yeah, because that's how the charter's written. So,
Okay.
There's certain things that he can do, signing on behalf of the town, making the decisions as it relates to, the town employees. Those aren't things that he comes to the council with.
Okay.
But employee, most stuff he comes to the council. And he does it, I think,
Judiciously?
willingly, because he wants that. He wants that interaction. He wants the town council to be part of that decision-making process, and that he makes the town council aware, which is great.
Now, so you mentioned town council. You mentioned that we have a town manager.
Yep.
Now, that all changed. Was it 3 years ago this all changed?
2019, it was changed over from the Board of Selectmen to the town manager form of government via a referendum vote. Overwhelmingly, people really wanted the change, and I'm glad it changed. And it's still taking some time, because people, forever we were a Board of Selectmen. That
Right.
Board of Selectmen, that was the guy, that was the woman, that was the person that was
Right.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Living in town, being part of the community, being at everything, seeing them, at a baseball field, at a football field, at the grocery store.
Sure.
Town manager is different. A lot of times they want to do their job and they want to, retreat back to where they may live.
Sure.
And, our town manager, does not live in town, but he comes in, does his job, and does what's expected of him per our charter and per his contract.
Now, you said you're glad that this form of governance come about. What do you think is the biggest difference that this change has made?
It's more professionally run. A lot of the things as it relates to finances and how the town spends money and uses the money and allocates money. The town manager is a lot different than a first selectman would be, because they're a professional. This is what he's done. He comes here with over 20 years of experience, so he's done 20 budgets in his lifetime. So it makes things, on that side different, but on the other side, well, why can't we just get that $500 we need for whatever?
Right.
You know, you can't, you know, and it's, the money's taxpayer money has to be allocated. And so the process is he brings that to the council, and then council decides on, you know, are we willing to spend that money on whatever that may be.
Now, speaking of budgets, you just had a pretty good victory this
We did.
past week.
And again, you know, it's the council, I think, has the easiest of the jobs. You know, we have budget meetings that start early in February, and we have those discussions that go on. Town manager then meets with the department heads and the superintendent of schools, and they discuss kind of where they're headed, what they need. And so, you know, when we come and we do the workshops, it's presented to us in a very professional manner. You know, so he brings that to us, we discuss it, we look at it. The council, you know, coming out of the box is basically saying, this is where we would like to be with our, you know, with our budget. So the strange and kind of difficult thing sometimes is when you're changing over with council members, because we had new council members, but we'd already had meetings in February, but we had new council members seated in November. So there were discussions with the previous town council and the department heads to discuss where we want to be. And that changes, which is fine. And we all agreed at the end of the day that we would like to do what we could to get it to a 0 increase. And at the end of the day, that's what we did.
Now, you know, when we talked in February, the budget you initially proposed was 59.8, something in that range?
Correct.
And the budget that you approved just recently was 59,665, 871.
Yep.
What happened in the meantime? From where there, that's pretty close to where you initially came in.
Yeah, but and then because what happens is a lot of the time, well, not a lot of the time. So what happens when you're a manager running your town, he works with the department heads, so they kind of, you know, do you need this, do you not need this? Where do we have some wiggle room? You know, I'm not going to allow that increase. And then he gives us some proposed budget cuts based upon his conversations with the department heads. So he comes to the council and says, I've already had these discussions, and these are some budget cuts that I can present to you that if you would like to, you know, allocate and move forward with. And then at that point, you have a different number. And then so there's undesignated funds that are available for us to take capital from there, apply it to our bottom line, and then zero us out, which is what we did. Ultimately, it came down to, I think, $370,000 that we would need to take from undesignated funds to apply it to our mill rate to get us to 29.83.
Right. So now I don't understand. I mean, I don't think people totally understand that when you vote on town budgets, it's really broken down into two components. So for this year, the town budget was 531.88. And that was a 2.49 increase.
Yep.
The vote was 842 to 284.
Yep.
Which represented 1,126.
Yeah.
Now, what were some of the major line items that caused that increase?
Mostly they relate to contractual agreements that we have with town employees, because 77, I think, % of our budget is related to union contracts. Okay. So there's not much you can do at that point because those are mandated and built into the contracts that we have with the unions.
And then you also have a town planner that was added in there?
The town planner was added in for 70,000 and then plus some additional for benefits. So yes, so that was added in too. So you'll always have those increases. It's just a matter of, you know, on the revenue side, how are we going to kind of build up the revenue? We've been lucky because we've had some new developments in town. Unfortunately, at the beginning, you give some tax abatement, so you're not getting the full amount. But at least we can see, you know, things growing. So we have, you know, Indian River Shops that's up and running the Big Y. Madison Furniture Barn will be moving in. Starbucks will be opening up. So those things are important to the town. And then there's some development going on in other places that relates to apartments and such. So, you know, that builds the revenue side. So the revenue side is where we have to make sure that our grand list side continues to increase, because that'll help offset the expense side increases, which are always going to be there.
I'm sure. You've got fixed expenses. There's nothing you can do about it.
Right, and it's both sides. So our town, we have the operational side and we have the Board of Education side.
Yeah, let's talk about the Board of Education.
Yeah, same way. So they fall under kind of the same parameters.
Yeah. So their budget this year that was approved was 37,789,236. That was an increase of 642,220,
Yep.
or 1.73 increase. The vote was 797 to 328. Now, how close do you work together with the Board of Ed?
The town council They present a budget to us, and then they present a workshop, and then so we have an open discussion with them as far as their budget goes. But the majority of the discussions happen between the town manager and the superintendent of schools.
Mary Ann O'Donnell.
Yes, Mary Ann O'Donnell. So the Board of Education sets their budget, and they work with Mary Ann, and then they bring that to Carl, and then they discuss that, and then we kind of get the overview on where they are. Same thing, union contracts.
Right.
The increases are the increases, so there's not much you can do. And the Board of Education side obviously is a lot tougher.
Sure.
Because revenue side, well, they really don't have a revenue side. So,
Were there any major line items that caused that to increase other than the fixed obligations?
normally it's health benefits that there's normally an adjustment on. Obviously going forward, there's some things that we have to look at based upon transportation costs. Increases in fuel costs, things like that are going to have an impact on our budget. So that's some of the things that we'll probably have to adjust going forward, because so we're in contracts with, for fuel for the bus. Those contracts are coming up for renewal. So there's going to be increases in that because we see where the fuel costs are going.
Oh, yeah.
So
do I ever?
Yeah, we all do.
We all do.
Right.
Yeah.
So, those are things that we're going to have to look at. And then, the good part is that you have an open and honest discussion about where you want to be as a town. And I think the benefit of that town manager is he brings forth that with everybody, because we all want to be on the same page. We all want to do what's best for the town. We understand people are still struggling. When we set the mill rate, we did it last night at our meeting. There was a zero increase, and hopefully people understand that. The other thing people really struggled with was the amount of people that voted.
Yeah, that's my next question for you. I noticed that the total turnout was 1,127, which is 11% of the registered voters in the town. That's down from last year when it was 1,575, which was 17%.
Yeah.
What do you think the issue is?
Personally, I think it just relates to the fact that it was a zero increase budget.
Yeah.
And people felt they were happy with it, they were comfortable with it, and I think that might have kept some people away from voting. Other than that, I don't know what would prevent somebody from voting.
Yeah.
But if you're at zero, if those 282 people or whatever that voted no,
Yeah.
were you looking for more?
Right.
And I guess that's something that they wanted. But how much more can you go to drop that down and to have it make sense? That's kind of what you do, because the cuts are the difficult thing.
Sure.
Let's face it, in a town our size, very limited to what we can cut. Do we cut out a planner? Well, we all felt, council-wise, that that's somewhere we wanted to go. And I think it's beneficial to the town as a whole as well, because it's going to, as we develop more in this town, as we have these, developments that are going forward, planner helps.
Sure.
So I think overall, I'm happy with the budget. I'm glad where we ended.
Sure.
Would you like to see more people vote? Absolutely.
Now, it's interesting. People ask, well, wait a minute, we had this increase, we have that increase I just mentioned. So how do you have the increase, keep the mill rate the same, and no raise in tax? There's not going to be an increase in taxes, right? So what kind of magic did you come up with to do that?
The mill rate is based upon, obviously, expenditures as relates to the town.
Right.
So what happens is, you can adjust the mill rate based upon using undesignated funds. So what we do is we take the undesignated funds, and so in our town, we've been told by the bonding agencies, which determine our bond rating, which determine ultimately when we borrow money, what kind of rates we're going to get. So that bond agencies want us to be at a 15% threshold. So they want our capital reserves to be at that number. So anything over and above that is undesignated funds. So there was monies available in that due to the sale of Morgan, some FEMA reimbursements, and some other one-time monies that the town received, that we were able to take that money to buy down the mill rate. So there was a mill rate increase based upon those numbers, but we're able to knock that down using that number, that undesignated fund balance. Not ideal to do it every year.
Right.
Not something you want to get in a habit of doing.
That was my next question. Yeah.
No. So not the way to do business, let's put it that way. So because again, those funds are there for one-time emergencies. If we have a hurricane and we need $1 million because it's going to cost us that to clean up, we have to, as a town, put that money out there. Then we get reimbursed from FEMA. How long that takes could be 18 months, could be 2 years. So you always have to have those funds over and above your threshold should something happen.
So at what point do you say, okay, we might have these, these things that come up, unforeseen circumstances that come up, but gee, we've exhausted our undesignated funds, we've used it towards, reducing the mill rate. So you got to be very judicious as to how you do that.
Can't do it.
So what's the magic there?
This year we were lucky. We took some of it because we did have a decent amount. town manager went through the budget and gave us some capital expenses that we should use it on. Because again, you have to weigh the option on what you're going to use that money for.
Right.
Because it needs to be something that makes sense to the town financially going forward. So you're not just using it because you're using it, you want it to make sense. But as you're looking long-term, you have to make sure that you're not utilizing a lot of that money, because if it's a one-time get for the town, which a lot of that was, because we're not selling Morgan again,
Right,
you know,
right.
we're not getting FEMA reimbursement again.
Right.
At a point, if you keep doing it, it's gone. Then what do you do? Because if you drop below the 15% threshold, then the bonding agency is going to review us. The bond agency may say, now you're not a double A, you're an A or whatever, and now you're paying more for the money that you need to borrow for bonding.
Right.
And then that obviously in turn affects our debt service, which in turn affects taxes.
Right.
So because our payments are higher, and so it's, you know, that's why you need, I think, the professional town manager here to make sure that he's staying on top of that.
Right.
Because, and that's the reason why we've had more of a consistent kind of budget-related number for the 3 years that he's been here. Because you don't want the ebbs and flows.
Right.
We don't want to get to that point where, oh, by the way, guess what? In order to keep the 15%, our taxes are going up 7% this year. Because people then can't, that's a very uncomfortable feeling for people, not knowing what's going to happen.
Right.
So budget cuts at some point come into play. You know, where they go, where they come from, I don't know. You know, that's something that we as a council would have to discuss, and obviously, you know, include the town manager to see where we are.
So in other words, the taxpayers are watching a couple of things. First of all, the mill rate did not change.
Nope.
Right? There will be no increases in taxes.
None.
And so therefore, do you think there might be a complacency that sets in and says, well, they worked their magic last year, I hope they can do it again this year?
Yeah.
So
It's a problem.
we just want the taxpayers to understand, this is something that you have to do very judiciously.
Yes.
And it might not work every year, but this year, things fell in the line where it did work.
Correct.
Is that correct?
So, right, you have to be fiscally responsible, knowing that you don't want to put the town into a position now that 3 or 4 years down the road, you're going to have that ebb and flow again, where
Right.
you're back up to 7, 8. I mean, we've had 10% tax increases in town.
Right.
We don't want to be there again. And the town manager, you know, again, is here to kind of work that so that we're level. It's going to, listen, we're not going to sit here and say this is going to continue to happen, because it can't.
Sure.
You know, the benefits that we have in our town is we have some new development, we have some grand list, you know, revenues that'll be coming in the coming years. You know, hopefully we have Unilever that hopefully will, you know, start coming to fruition, and he'll start doing something over there. We have the apartments next to Unilever that are going up. You know, Indian River, hopefully that'll continue to grow and bring in new tenants there, so that, you know, there are things in town that'll help. Pearson obviously is going to be another target on our back to at some point to decide what we'll do with that. So it's you know, we're in a good position, but yes, we can't have people believe that this is something that we'll be able to do every year.
Right.
What played into it as well is we're not out of COVID. There's people are struggling, you know, and then as we got closer to the budget season, we also understood inflation, we understand gas prices, we understand
Right.
food prices. Everybody's struggling. I mean, you look at our town, and every Wednesday we have the food bank.
Yeah.
The cars are back out in the road again.
Yeah, and I
You know?
encourage everybody to take advantage of that, and also support the food bank. I think it's a great thing in town.
I mean, our town, I mean, as far as, you know, like you asked, one of the reasons why you came here, because of how people really do engage, you know, and what they will give to our town. You know, Families Helping Families is an enormous part of our town in doing what they do, and they have kind of their hands on everything that happens. The food bank, you know, human services. We have a lot of outlets in town that are going to help people that are struggling, and unfortunately, it's still continuing, and hopefully we'll see an end. I don't know, but it's hard.
I mean, you have an open forum now. Do you think there's any other services in town that the taxpayer might not be aware of, that they should really get behind and do more research on?
Yeah, I mean, human services is a big part of our town, because they can help people that are struggling with energy costs. You know, we have the food bank, we have Families Helping Families. So, you know, those organizations are around to help. You know, so, you know, getting in touch with them. Human Services obviously would be able to direct you wherever you needed to go.
Mm-hmm.
So Clinton Human Services would be maybe the point of contact, because they work with all the other agencies, and they'd be able to direct you if you struggle with anything. You know, in the winter it's fuel costs. In the summer, you know, is there monies that you can get that might help with other things that you need? So, you know, COVID-related money, we had the ARPA funding, so some of those agencies are getting money as well, which, you know, we're trying to give to them to give back into the community. So a lot of that stuff is out there as well. But I mean, we have a number of different places that Human Services would be able to help direct you where you would need to go.
Now, what are some of the resources you have available? Because, sometimes people say, I never knew we had that. What are some of the places people can go to get that information? They have Harbor News, which is on a weekly basis. What are some of the other places they can go to find out about?
You go to the town website. Town website has a lot of the stuff that's attached to that, and they'll direct you off of there what agencies to go to or where to. You can find certain things. And that's always been a big thing. I mean, the communications of kind of how you get the message out to the people that we didn't know. And it's hard because, the paper, well, I don't get the paper.
Yeah.
I don't have internet, but I don't know how to use the computer. So what do you do? And it's hard. It's we've struggled with that. One of the first things I did when I got on the council was making sure that we get more information out to everybody, because they need to know kind of what's going on in town. All the people want to know what is going on.
Right.
But then the other part of it is what is available to them. It's hard, and there's a lot of different outlets to do it, but which is the right one and the proper one. So there are things that we're working on as far as communication goes within the town. Some of the ARPA money that we got, we're hoping to kind of build up that. So going forward, we'll see what we can do.
And I know you do a good job getting the word out.
We try.
A lot of people say, well, I don't use that venue.
Right.
But you did do a good job on the town budget and getting all the information out about that, whether it be out the people read it or not. But I hope they did.
Yep.
But do you think the fact that people saw that it was going to be no change, or there's not going to be a change in the mill rate and the tax were going to change, you think that was part of the apathy around not coming out to vote?
I do.
Because I know in the past, I mean, you get a town vote, on the budget, it'd be like 30% of the town voters.
Yes.
And one of the things I was really interested in when I did some research is that between 2009 and 2019, there was only one time in 2017 you actually had both budgets passed. What happened? And also we noticed that at the end of the town meeting, or the referendum meeting, people be parked in the parking lot waiting to hear the results. I think there were 10 people out here at the end of the result. What's changed between then and now?
Well, I mean, I think in the past, there wasn't stability within the town, and it was hard because it's a little bit different on how budgets operate and how they worked, and not to say that we had a bad form of government, but it's difficult. I mean, you have a selectman, a board of selectmen, and selectman form of government is different. I mean, it's technically a layperson that's into that job and then kind of learning on the job.
Right.
And what is the best way to do all these things. And having the town manager helps because it levels things off and it makes things a little bit easier. The budgets in the past always had a tendency to be a big vote turnout was because people didn't like them. They didn't like the fact that the rates, they were going up.
Yeah.
I mean, between 9 and 19, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, the appreciation of values, and then the taxes kept going up. I mean, people's tax bills maybe doubled, sometimes even more than that. So they were out to vote no because we need you to cut things.
Right.
And then it became, what do you cut?
Right.
In a town our size, it's very difficult on what you cut because you can't cut specifics. So as a council, we can say, we want you to reduce your budget by X. We can't tell anybody, we can't tell the Board of Education, we need you to cut a teacher.
Right.
We tell you, we want you to cut it X amount of dollars, and then they have to then find where they're going to cut from. On the town side, it's the same thing. We're not telling you to get rid of people or to lay people off, but if we tell you reduce your budget by X, they, as a department head, wherever that would come from, would be, where are we going to get that money?
Right. And plus, like you say, those fixed obligations that you can't cut.
Right. And again, it would be at some point, and laying off somebody who's in a union obviously is a bigger problem because then there's a process that you have to go through.
Sure.
So unfortunately, we have a lot of unions in town, so we're limited to what you can do there. So it's hard, and that's what I feel the town manager brings to the table. He brings a steady hand, making sure people understand, make sure that we get out to the public how these things work now, and that just because it happened in the past doesn't mean it may not happen again.
Right.
But we're trying to level it so that you're not going to get a one-time 10% tax increase, and that's what you have to work towards. You have to work towards knowing. And again, our job isn't next year, our job 2 years. Our job is 5 years.
Right.
Whether we are on the council or not, we have to look at things down the road and the decisions that we make now, what impact they'll have 5 years down the road.
And I guess that's my next question. What are, the town council, do you have your own set of long-term goals?
We do a goal-setting workshop that we have.
Okay.
We just did a new one again with the new council members, and actually last night we just town manager put together for us like a log that had all the things that we discussed. So we do have goals that the town council has agreed upon, and that we ratified that again at our meeting last night.
Any major goals that you can, talk about?
I mean, it's pretty standard stuff, just making sure that we're going to do what's in the best interest of the town. There's nothing really major. Most of the things as far as, the projects, we're limited to what we have because of just what we own in town. I mean, we have, Pearson is ours, we own it. But other than that, it's just making sure that we as a council are all on the same page and we're working towards, the viability of the community, the beautification of the community, working together, creating an environment of, positive environment for everybody, whether it be the employees that work here, whether it be people that live here. Those are the things that the council needs to kind of get together, and we're on the same page now because we've ratified those. A big part of it is like beautification of the town. I mean, people want to see.
Sure.
They want to see that. So we, 2 meetings ago, set up a beautification committee. So we set that up so that exists now in town. So there's an advisory committee to that. So there's a lot of those things that are just important to the town. That's what we work on.
So you've set a five-year goals?
Those goals get set on an annual basis with the council. When we look at things financially, when we look at things, the financial impact on the town, that's, you want to be out in that area so that like Pearson, let's say Pearson. So what are we going to do with it? Well, if you keep it, it's going to cost X amount of dollars to fix it up. Then if you want to make it, a community center, a senior center, then there's operational costs every year. Okay, so if people want that, great. But the problem is they need to also understand that there's going to be costs associated with that, which are going to make your budget go up.
Sure.
And then ultimately your taxes go up because that money has to be covered somewhere. So you have to make sure that we're making a decision in the best interest of the town.
Now, do you do that every year? So you set a 5-year plan, but every year you have to go back and sort of readjust it?
Absolutely.
So, some of the contingencies that you must have to build in, first of all, you got a turnover in council members, so that's going to have an impact.
Yep.
And what about unforeseen circumstances, like COVID, for example?
Yep.
Yeah, how do you factor that in?
Well, COVID you can't.
Yeah.
That's something that, right, it came to you, now what do we do?
Yeah, exactly.
On that end, our town is, again, the people that step up in this town when that happened was just unbelievable.
Incredible.
Our first responders, volunteer fire department, the emergency director, these people were just, gave of themselves morning, noon, and night to do whatever they had to help the town. So COVID-related items, that's kind of a different ball.
Right.
But you have the 100-year storm. You have things like that. Those are the things that, you have to be prepared for.
Right.
So that's the contingency money that sits there that if it does happen, we have to have that money available. If you don't,
That's that surplus you mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah, and because if we're going, again, the other thing, you go below the 15%, they know, and then the next thing you know is you're paying more for your money.
Right.
And it, again, a negative impact on your taxes.
Sure.
So it all works together. Having, a group that we all understand that now, and that was hard, I think, for the council when they first started because we don't have a Board of Finance anymore. So the Board of Finance used to deal with the First Selectman and the Board of Selectmen. So we deal with that, and I think at the beginning, like council members didn't know that we then have the ability to say, hey, listen, this is where we want to be in our budget. You have to be realistic. When we come out and we say we want 0 at the beginning, it's just not unreal. That's unrealistic.
Right.
You come out and you say we would like to be at a 2% or a 2.5%, because then you're tying it more so to the pay increases, because they're on a 2 to whatever their pay increases are. So that's kind of where you start. But at least we have the ability to do that. The manager has worked with us to get us to understand that that's what he needs from us.
All right.
So
this has definitely been a triumvirate of a collaborative effort between the Board of Ed, the town manager, and the town council. You guys deserve a lot of credit. And like I said, even though you have a full-time job, this is also a full-time job. So I really give you a lot of credit for doing that, Chris. And I think everybody in town appreciates what you're doing, appreciate the fact that we got this budget's passed, no mill increase.
On to next year.
No tax rate. So wait till next year. But don't let this fool you, because it could be an increase last year. Well, Chris, I want to thank you very much.
Thank you,
It's been
Tom, for
very
having me.
informative.
I
Hopefully it
appreciate
was
it.
very informative for the residents. And I want to, again, ladies and gentlemen, this has been great. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have other things you'd like to have us cover in town, you can reach us at iris.dunham@clintonpublic.net. So please feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to come out because we want to highlight all the positive things that are happening here in our town of Clinton. As you can see from this budget process, it's a lot of work, a lot of dedicated people like Chris and Carl Kildoff and the town council and the Board of Education. But that's what this town is all about, working together to give us a good place to live, a good place to raise our children, and a good place for all of you to be very, very proud of. And so far, things are working really well. But reach out to us because we'd love to highlight anything you feel is good for our town. So this is Tom Foster along with Iris Dunham, Chris Aniskovich. Thank you for watching tonight's show. See you again next week.